Brad Stine, welcome to Cinema Sessions.
Thank you so much.
You have no idea what we're doing here.
No, I don't. But I like that. I
Usually
like that.
you're
I feel very comfortable on the sofa.
Great.
You know, I assume that we're going to watch a movie.
Oh, yeah.
Cinema Sessions.
Correct.
Do I
Yeah.
get to pick something good from like the 80s or 90s?
No, that's up to, well, actually, yeah, we'll do some 90s. There we go. Now you're
All
on
right,
it.
there you go.
But let's start actually with a more recent cinema session. This is
This was pretty cinema, whatever.
cinema something. Last night, first round, Tommy Paul, your current player, against Chris O'Connell.
Yep.
And this one turned into a roller coaster, didn't it?
Yeah, it's it started pretty well. Tommy played extremely well in the first set. Chris battled back. Tommy kind of gave up a break. I wouldn't say, he kind of, as often is the case, he helped out a little bit on the break in the second set. And then Chris started serving much better and actually started playing a little bit bigger, I think, taking a little bit more risk, and he was executing very well. I have a lot of respect for Chris as a player. For as long as he's been on the tour, I think he's a very tough competitor, and he hit the ball really well last night. And yeah, it started to get a little complicated. You thought Tommy went up and won the third relatively easily, and then served for the fourth.
Yep, he was in control.
And you felt that he was dictating and pretty much in control. But
Ooh, now that shot was crazy.
That's a pretty good shot. Yeah, we got a little nod. I think at some point he looked over at us and was kind of like, "Did you guys see that?"
I did that.
But yeah, as happens, serving for the match, he got a little bit tight, and Chris stepped up on some balls and ended up breaking serve and then winning the fourth in a breaker, and then in the fifth was a war, absolute war.
So that got a little more complicated last night than maybe you guys anticipated, but what are the qualities, what are the aspects, you've been now with Tommy for a few years, as well as you know him, what helps him through matches like that?
Tommy, I think in the end, Tommy's he's a bit of a battler. So, I would definitely say that the biggest key there is just his competitive nature, and unwillingness to kind of give in.
There's a quote out there from Tommy about you having this young spirit, but also wisdom from over the years. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but what makes you guys click so well? Because it's been 4 or 5 years, this partnership?
Yeah, we're starting our 6th year, actually.
Wow.
I would say it's a combination of maybe I have a little bit of a young spirit, and I've been around long enough to have some wisdom.
Fair.
But I think also, it's funny, we talk about, Tommy reminds me and acts a lot like a guy that I say was born in the 1950s.
Really?
I was born in the 1950s.
Okay.
It's a little late 1950s, but he's got a little bit of an old school mentality. He's got an old school toughness to him. He likes simple things, and he's not a very complicated guy. It's funny, like we seem to constantly find things that we share experiences from, like our childhoods. And Tommy was a little bit of a wild child and grew up in North Carolina and had access to a lot of outdoor stuff and stuff like that. And he's just a tough guy. He was a tough guy from the standpoint of going out as a kid and scraping his knees up and different things like that. And not letting that bother him and stuff. So I think we get along with relationship to all those things, really.
He's also a guy coming up in juniors. He was kind of always the smaller built. You look at the stature of a Francis Tiafoe, Riley Opelka, Taylor Fritz. He wasn't always the biggest guy in juniors, so I think he had to fight his way for his position too. Yeah,
definitely, and I think that lends itself to the fact that we've really pushed to develop more of an all-court game for Tommy. He's getting closer, I think, but he didn't really, when we first started, possess the pace of ball, the power of ball, the weight of ball of a guy like Fritz, or obviously Riley's a whole different animal. But even Francis, and so we developed his game around more attacking, being an all-court player, being able to do a little bit of everything and finding ways to make guys uncomfortable beyond just the ball striking aspect. And he's really embraced that. He's been, I give Tommy massive credit from the day we started. He's been extremely coachable.
Really?
Very open to doing new things, trying new things. And I think that's one of the reasons that, I like to think, and I think most people see this, that his game has continued to develop
Yeah.
You know, year in and year out, there's different things that he's been able to do, and you know, our goal is to get him to the point where he doesn't really have any holes in his game, and you know, can play really, really good all-court tennis and find solutions for, you know, winning matches. Maybe when he's not able to do this, but he can do something else. You know, if staying back isn't working against somebody, he can come forward. He can serve and volley a little bit more. He can, you know, he attacks off the second serve and comes in. And, you know, we want all of that stuff to happen for him. So.
Tell us about this run. This is 2 years ago. Gets into the quarters. Obviously, it was a huge moment for Ben Shelton, but this is also the first time Tommy had been into a major semifinal. He met this moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you know, it was his first quarterfinal in a slam, and you know, I think he was a little bit made a little bit more comfortable playing Ben, someone that he knew a little bit. Also knew that, you know, Ben had a phenomenal run in this tournament to get to that quarterfinal. So I think he went into the match a little bit more comfortable than if he had played someone who was a much more established, you know, guy that had been in quite a few quarterfinals or something like that. Played really well in that match against Ben. And then, you know, here when he got to the semis, you know, obviously playing Novak, and it's a semi. Novak's fighting to get to the finals. You know, it was tough. It was tough. And Novak, man, I remember, you know, this is when they started with the iPads in the coaching boxes.
Okay.
And I remember looking at the iPad for Novak's return stats, and they were off the charts.
Yeah.
And Tommy getting absolutely 0 free points, and Novak was really, really aggressive on Tommy's second serve and not missing. And Novak doing Novak things. You know, it was hard for Tommy to find a way to break him down a lot, and needed to do a little bit more of that. You know, trying to come forward and trying to find ways to pressure him a little bit.
Right.
So this is a different guy right here.
All right, what do we have here? Actually, you tell us.
That's 93. That was Jim's second Grand Slam title.
I didn't realize.
Look at that shirt.
Matching kits.
Yeah, that was good. That was Jim designed that shirt. He actually, he had input on that shirt. It was, you know, it was obviously modeled after baseball, and Jim was a big baseball fan, so it was modeled after baseball.
We'll talk about sort of your partnership with Jim in total, because you guys started working together in '91. And he was a young guy, right? He was up. Yeah,
he was 20. Jim was 20 when we started.
What drew you to him? Because over the next 2 years, you guys would win 120 matches. He wins 4 slams. I mean, you really met the moment with Jim Courier.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to have developed an association with Jim and the guys of Jim's generation through a program that was called Junior Davis Cup back then. Different than what they call Junior Davis Cup now, but the Junior Davis Cup squad back in those days, this is '92, he's wearing the different clothes here.
Yeah.
And the Junior Davis Cup was really our national team, the best junior players, and it was more of a summer program at that time. And I met Jim through that program, and we just kind of stayed in touch, and then after he had turned pro, he was looking to make a change in his coaching. He'd been working with a guy from the Bollettieri Academy when he first came out and first turned pro.
Yeah.
And he reached out to Tom Gullickson, who at that time was the director and head of men's tennis for the USTA. And that got him connected. Gully connected him with Jose Higueras.
Yep.
And then they were looking for someone to travel with them on a full-time basis. Jose didn't want to travel a lot, and my name was on the short list. And the story is always kind of funny to me in a way. I'll tell it. We'll see if it's funny to you or not.
Yes, I'm ready.
But I had an opportunity a couple years earlier to work with Pete Sampras. And I turned it down because I was so smart, you know.
Yeah, right.
I knew he wasn't very talented.
Okay, noted.
So it was, you know, it was when Pete was just turning pro. And I was asked if I was interested in traveling with and working with Pete, and I turned it down. You know, I was coaching college tennis at the time, and some other stuff was going on, and I you know, didn't really know a lot about the tour, to be honest with you. And then, you know, over the course of the next couple of years, watched Pete do so well, and when Jim reached out and asked me about about traveling with him, something that I really wanted to do. And I'd always wanted to coach on the tour at that level. I just felt that I always have said if I was a baseball coach, I would have wanted to coach at the Major League Baseball level if I got an opportunity to do that, or in the NFL if you were a football coach, just to experience the highest level. And so I'd always kind of wanted to coach at the tour level. And yeah, that's back to '93 again. This was the second year after the matches we jumped in the Yara.
Two plunges.
Yeah, 2 plunges. I have a third nipple because of that.
Yeah, exactly.
The Yara is so. See, I only have 2 right there, but
right. Eventually you're going to grow a third.
Yeah, but yeah, we had done this the year before, and it was funny because the year before we're walking right here because Jim started cramping while we were running through the car park.
No way.
Yeah, he started cramping a little bit. It was absolutely this final. Was absolutely sweltering.
This is '93.
It was incredibly hot that day. Won a 4-setter. The first 2 sets were relatively easy, but he won a 4-setter against Stefan Edberg. And I actually asked him afterwards, I was like, hey, we don't have to go jump in the river if and he's like, no, we're doing it.
Yeah.
And then we started jogging out, and he actually started cramping a little bit in the car park.
Wow.
But we had done it the year before, and we hadn't told anybody. Nobody knew the year before, so we went out completely on our own. No one knew we were going. And there just happened by chance to be one single, look at my hat right there.
So it's gross.
Covered with
really gross.
With some muck right there. So yeah, there just happened to be one photographer that was
in '92.
Yes, he was from the match.
That photo's still on the wires.
And he had been walking by, and he stopped and caught us going in the river, coming back out, everything. Yeah, and I think he might have made a career out of that photo. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think he did.
It was everywhere that year.
Is it true then that Jim got sick after this? That's what the record books
not that I know of.
state.
I've never seen that, really.
Yeah.
I don't remember him getting sick. I do remember after he won the first year, he came back to the States and he was on the Letterman show.
Okay.
And David Letterman had some stat that he presented to Jim, which Jim did not know, I didn't know at the time, that the Yara was the 16th or 17th most polluted river in the world. And we were like, really? Like, we knew it was, kind of mucky and brown and everything, but we didn't know it was, like, on a list like that.
Right. Would anyone in this room jump in the Yara? Maybe Raina would. Got a lot of shaking heads, no. I want to ask you, thinking back to '92, because when he played Stefan Edberg in that final, I think he had a walkover in the semis.
So he gets into Richard Krajicek.
Against Krajicek,
Yeah.
So he gets into the final having not played a semi. And also, Edberg had just waxed him in the U.S. Open final a few months before.
Yeah.
So how did you get him ready for this showdown?
Well, the walkover in the semis, a lot of people, obviously everyone speculates about everything. Is it good to have a walkover in the semi or not? You have a few more days off and all that stuff. And it's like, man, I'm not complaining about having extra days to rest and prepare a little bit. So that was a little bit of a funny story, too. We were in the locker room, and gentleman comes in to tell us that Richard was going to default in the semis of a Grand Slam. We were actually kind of like shocked, and so we're like, okay, thank you very much and everything, and and as soon as the guy walked out the door, we were like, yes, come on, and we were like kind of celebrating. And then I always remember I said to Jim,
polite.
I was like, okay, now go to the press and say like, oh man, I feel really bad. It's not the way I wanted to win, and everything, But yeah, it was like, he got tuned up pretty good in the finals of the U.S. Open. And the one thing I remember before the match is, obviously Stefan had a great backhand. And Jim's best shot was his inside-out forehand. And his backhand was not great, And so backhand to backhand, you got to give a big advantage to Stefan in that situation. But we talked about the fact that if Jim could find his forehand inside out, we said, look, you match your best shot against his best shot, and let's see who's better. And I think that one thing that did was it creates a little bit of confidence in your player to say that, from coaching standpoint, you're saying, like, I think your forehand inside out is going to be better than Edberg's backhand, and you're going to be able to control that rally from that standpoint. And so I think that was a little bit of a confidence builder, me saying that that's a matchup that we want. You play to his best shot. Doesn't matter. We're not gonna try and change what you do and what's the best part of your game, just because of the situation. So,
And it worked.
And it worked. That's the one thing that I really remember about going into that match.
Okay, last question for you in terms of Tommy is, how does he go that next step? How do you guys level him up to be knocking on the door of a Grand Slam trophy?
Yeah, it's the biggest problem. Obviously, is there's a bunch of other guys trying to do the same thing.
There are.
So you've got to find a way to get through those guys, and that's things that we've discussed over the last number of years. Obviously that's been one of our goals, and Tommy's made consistent progress, and he's in a position where he's right there, a little bit outside, obviously, of being a favorite. But he's definitely an outside contender, I think, and he's beaten all the guys in front of him pretty much, except for one or two. But he's got wins over Carlos. He's beaten Jannik. He's beaten Sasha a number of times. He's beaten Taylor. So the question is, can you do that over the course of 2 or 3 matches in a row? Because most likely you have to play, one of those guys in the round of 16, in the quarters, in the semis, to get through. And being able to do that is not easy. And it's, one, it's the physicality of it, and 2, it's producing the tennis that is required under that kind of pressure. And we've been really pushing for him to get more titles, because I think titles are the stepping stone to having an opportunity to win a major. You start winning 500s, you start winning 1000s. You're beating those guys on those stages, and then that should ideally translate to being able to do it here. That's the goal. Making that happen, obviously, is a lot harder than just talking about it. So, I think Tommy's game matches up well with a lot of those guys. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen necessarily, but that's what you're striving for always. I think we're coming into these events feeling like Tommy's got a chance. Maybe it's an outside chance, but he's got a chance.
Yeah.
Deep and finds a way through.
Are we jumping in the Yara if he wins it?
We haven't talked about.
Come on.
I mean, I'm a big
Brad.
symmetry kind of guy, so maybe a 4th nipple would be good.
No, that's a movie that maybe we'd skip actually. Grab your popcorn.
I mean, I'm taking this with me.
Yeah, you can actually.
Thank you, man.
Brad Stine.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.